And away we go. All right. We are here on Talking Pallets. I'm your host, Daniel Crosier, and I'm with a fantastic guest today, Tom Coyne.
Oh, me, yes.
Yes,
Coyne.
Coyne.
Coyne, that's right, for you French speakers out there.
When you say it like that, it sounds like a very sexy drink or like a cognac or something. Maybe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. You can only take it in little bits at a time.
Yeah. It's one that you want to sip. Yes. Otherwise, you're not driving home at night.
That's right. But when bartenders serve it, they think highly of you.
Yeah. There you go. Oh yeah, big tip.
Yeah. Right.
Hey. Tom, thanks for being so generous with your time and coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Typically first question I ask is, it's usually a pretty large one. It's like, who are you? How did you get into drumming? And where do you come from?
Oh, okay. Who am I? I'm Thomas Coyne. I'm just I'm just a Los Angeles bred kid born in the late 60s. I was born in the summer of love, 1967. Nice. So I should be a huge hippie, but I was a little late for that. That was more my brother's thing. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, so I'm the spoiled brat at the end. Oh, nice. So hence I became a musician because they let me do whatever I wanted. Yeah, but interesting story. So I have an older brother who was 15 years older than me, who was a drummer. So when I was about 2 or 3, they bought me a little drum set because I wanted to emulate my older brother, Gary. It's that same story you always hear. I followed him around. He couldn't get me to shut up. So they bought me a little drum set to bang on that I would play while his band rehearsed in the garage. And he was in like a, late 60s kind of post-Beatles California rock band, like Jefferson Airplane, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I would go in there and bang on my little toy drum set. And I remember very clearly, if there's any other drummers there, they'll appreciate this. You used to be able to get a drumstick and hit the drum like this. Mm. Well, the heads were made of paper.
Oh, okay.
So I found that if you drove the stick into the head, it would make a perfect little hole. Mm. So that was the end of the drum set, because after 10 minutes of that, it was gonzo.
Yeah.
So that was the end of my childhood playing career. But basically, that's where it comes from. I was just copying my older brother, as kids do. When I was in 7th grade, I guess, my folks, for some reason, bought me a snare drum because I asked them to. And then a year later, I had a drum set in the house. So
cool.
Somehow my mother raised 2 drummers over 2 generations. So there was always somebody making terrible noise in the garage over like a 20-year span.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So she's a saint, man, because she never complained.
Oh,
I just had to stop. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it sounds like. Oh, sorry. It sounds like your parents or your mom was very supportive then.
For someone who doesn't give a rip about music, yes.
That's wonderful.
At least I guess they figured they knew where we were because they could hear us.
Yeah.
As long as I finished before my dad came home, it was good.
Nice.
So I could practice from, 2:30 to 6 every day, which is what I did. So that's why I don't have a rap sheet, I guess. Maybe, I don't know.
You were always preoccupied.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
So basically it started like that. And in high school, I was a marching band, and I learned a lot about snare drumming and rudiments and how to read music and things like that. But when it got really serious was after I went to community college for a couple years and studied music. And then I went to Percussion Institute in Hollywood. It's called PIT, which is part of the bigger Musicians Institute. And I did it for a year. And that's like going to Berkeley School of Music, but it's all then at the time, it was a 1-year program. And that's when I learned to become a musician more than just some guy playing rock songs in a band. super, super impactful.
Yeah.
You know, had these great teachers. Jeff Porcaro from Toto, his father was the head of the school.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, some of these guys that we're teaching there now that were lower level teachers are huge in the drum community now.
Yeah.
So it was insane. I learned how to play jazz and how to play Latin music. And, yeah.
Versatile.
Yeah. So that's the thing with the school. The idea was to get you to where you can make money playing anything and survive. For me, it got me to where I could pretty much show up at any gig and fake my way through and sound like I knew what I was doing. Right? So
brilliant.
yeah. So I've done jazz gigs before. I'm not a jazz player per se, but I can play believable jazz to someone who's not an expert, right? And that's kind of come in with all the things I'm doing now, like the feast thing. A lot of that stuff is based on things I learned at PIT, sticking patterns and Latin sort of ostinato things. The track that you have comes out of sort of the thing you would play in a mambo. That bass drum pattern is a mambo pattern, which is what I learned there.
And that, you know, the Feast project, that's your newest project, and that's based on music that you put together back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Way back in the dark ages.
I'm a child of the dark ages.
Remember, everything used to be in black and white back then. That's how I remember everything.
I just discovered bronze then.
Right. Exactly. Clearly. Yeah. In 1995, I was in my first real goth band.
Yeah.
Called The Prophetess, and it was a real 80s style goth band, like The Mission or the Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah.
That's who we sounded like the most. And at the time, we were playing clubs and like coffee houses and stuff in LA, and we needed an opening band for this coffee house gig we were going to do. So I was the opening band with the singer, Terry Kennedy. And we did like, I don't know, 15 minutes of me just playing tribal style drums, and her singing this crazy kind of Diamanda Gallis styling that she had.
That's
crazy range. Yeah. And that we called it Feast, which is a complete nod to Susie and the Banshees side project called The Creatures. Their first album's called Feast. Okay. And basically, we were ripping off her style. So that's where the name comes from. So I expect a cease and desist letter in the next few weeks.
Oh, good shot.
Yeah, exactly. Don't tell anybody.
If anything, I think she would be very supportive and encouraged by that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've never met Susie, so I don't know.
I met her once. I met them at a Tower Records in 1992, and she scared me to death. Yeah.
In a good way, or?
Yeah, it's the most, living in LA, in Hollywood, you meet lots of musicians and lots of rock stars. She's the only one that really intimidated me.
No kidding.
Like, well, her and Danzig. I was afraid to look at Danzig. Yeah. At a gig, I thought if I look him in the eye, he might possess me. Right?
Interesting.
Actually, I met him later. He was really nice.
Yeah. I've only seen interviews with either of them, and Danzig always comes off very intense.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just depends on the mood too.
I was playing at the Roxy with the Prophetess, and he was in the audience. So I went and talked to him and gave him the CD. He was really mellow.
Oh, that's cool.
But on stage, I was like, "Don't look him straight."
If you're on stage, don't eye him. Just
right.
Just focus on what you're doing.
Yeah. Right. Well, from the stage, you can only see him from like here up. It's kind of short.
Yeah.
But Susie, she was in full stage regalia. She had the stare going.
Yeah.
Budgie was really nice and personal, and she was just like you know. So I was like, sign this, please. Thank you very much. Out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like Susie's, probably one of your heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know of Susie mostly from, Susie and the Banshees,
Mm-hmm.
and that music, and really, like, almost 20 years ago, Yeah Yeah Yeahs was kind of that gateway into Susie and the Banshees for me.
Oh, right on.
So that, that I really find, even though, Susie and the Banshees is incredibly well known, band, but it's always fun to find these little modern conduits that kind of harken back to past influences, and it's amazing what you find.
They were really influential with guitar playing.
Okay.
In the death rock scene.
Yeah.
Every death rock band you see playing at any club anywhere in the United States sounds like they're playing joint hands. It's the same guitar style. So that's the style, right? They only did that for 2 records. But in death rock,
right,
the chorus guitar, all those octaves, the bass playing one riff the whole way through.
Yeah.
It's kind of them and Joy Division is where that comes from.
Okay.
So you can make a straight line back when you see a band at a club. That's what they're doing.
Nice.
And then the drumming thing, that's where that tribal tom-tom style drumming comes from. Mm-hmm. No cymbals, no riding on the ride cymbal. It's going to be riding on the floor tom. Yeah. That comes from those first couple Joy Division Banshee records. And they got it from just, from Brian Eno and stuff they were listening to. Okay. So, it's not exactly original, but for kids or people in our little scene, that's where it all comes from, for sure.
Well, it's nice to, to hear all these, fantastic musicians and lovers of music and what they do. And one generation or one influential artist informing the next generation. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And of course, pick and choose what works, just like any other creative art medium.
Yeah, right. It's just like film.
Yeah.
Anything else? Horror movies.
Yeah, most definitely. And to kind of continue that too, like some of your other bands, like most well known, 45 Grave. And you and I was mentioning to you that before we started recording that I always attributed 45 Grave as a little bit more punk, but I guess death rock is more appropriate, right?
See, that's an interesting conundrum that we run into a lot.
Okay.
In 45 Grave and Christian Death essentially created the California gothic rock.
Right.
At about the same time. They predate, like Christian Death was a band in late 78, 79. Mm-hmm. The first 45 Grave single came out in 79. Oh. The Banshees got their first records from 78. So they're about the same time period.
Yeah.
If you go to there's the place in downtown LA called the Grammy Museum. Mm. And there it says that 45 Grave and Christian Death created the death rock scene. So the death rock term is kind of a California thing.
Yeah.
I don't like to get into this stuff too much because, like in metal, there's a million different categories.
Right.
If you got this kind of singer, you're death metal. If you got that kind of singer, you're progressive, whatever. There's all these different names.
Yeah.
We're all just goth, right?
Sure.
Kind of. The thing with 45 Grave is half of their catalog were these older punk songs.
Yeah.
So we've had things like, there's a big festival in England called Whitby Gothic Weekend.
Oh, cool.
Well, they won't book us because we're too punk.
What the fuck?
I'm like, I don't know. The Grammys say we created goth. So, or the original 45 Grave did. So what is it? So we have that kind of, there's 3 things going on in that music.
Right.
There's straight up like almost Bowie-esque art rock.
Yeah.
Right. Which is kind of what the goth is.
Right.
And then there's just straight up punk music.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the joke of it all, which is liking Dark Shadows and the Addams Family and horror movies. And that's the funny part of it. So depending on who you're talking to, either a punk band or a goth band or a joke, I'm not sure.
Right.
Right.
I would say, you're all these things. I mean,
it's all in one thing.
You are incredibly influential, and like I mentioned before, thinking back, like in the early '80s, you had, Clash was breaking, the top 10, and then when Return of the Living Dead, the movie, like I distinctly remember in like Party Time from 45 Grave, always just stuck in my head. And it sounded like it kind of, was very prevalent for you too.
Yeah, I remember seeing that at the movies.
Yeah.
When I was 16 or 17, and hearing that song. I'll tell you a funny story. For those who don't know, I'm not the original drummer in 45 Grave. I joined in 2008.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the original lineup was Don Bowles on drums.
Okay.
Who was also in Celebrity Skin and then Germs. 45 Grave was sort of his side band when he was in the Germs.
Okay.
And Dinah Cancer singing. She's the remaining person. So nice. The way it works now is basically it's Dinah Cancer's 45 Grave. It's like a legacy thing, right? But we still do some original music.
Oh, cool.
And then Paul Cutler wrote all the songs. He was this genius, crazy jazz guitar player who wanted to be in a punk band.
Nice.
So that's why the music is so crazy, because he's thinking of it like Ornette Coleman, but he's playing punk rock.
Yeah.
And this guy may be the most punk rock person I've ever spoken to. If you say you like something he played, he will never play it again, and he'll play it different every time you see him. That's the kind of guy he was. And he could, because he was so good.
Yeah.
He's probably, for that era, the best actual guitar player in that whole scene. Cool. of early punk LA guys, because he was a monster player.
Nice.
And then their bass player was this guy named Rob Graves. He was one of those dudes. He was in 15 bands.
Yeah.
In LA, he was in Thelonious Monster. He was in the Bags. He was in all these different bands. So that's the original lineup. So when I was a kid, when I was in high school, in our neighborhood, as you do, we used to traipse around in the middle of the night getting into mischief.
Yeah.
And there was a car in my neighborhood with a 45 Grave bumper sticker of a pentagram. It was the goat, and it says Black Cross on it. And we were scared to death of this car. So we would literally walk around to my friend's house like after school, because we didn't want to go near this thing. Because who knows what that meant. Well, and then many years later, I'm playing those songs with those people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Did you ever tell the rest of the bands, like, I used to avoid the car with your bumper sticker on it?
After the first audition, we went out to eat, and I told them that story. I had to make sure I was in first.
That's great. For some reason I thought you were with the band a few years before that, like earlier than 2008. But
no, what happened is the original 45 Grave ended working really in about 1984.
Oh, okay.
And then they did sporadic gigs afterwards up until 1990. In 1989, so their last little bit of club gigs. They did a live record in 1989.
Oh, okay.
Which is very good.
Yeah.
And then the bass player died in 1992, I want to say.
Oh, shoot.
And there was a big benefit concert, and Flea came and played, and that was it.
Okay.
And they all went off to other things. Dinah got it going back again in 2004.
Oh.
With all different people.
Yeah.
And this is when this kind of legacy thing started. What she did is she got other people in our punk rock scene here
Yeah.
Rick Agnew was the first guitar player she got back. The bass player was this girl named Lisa Fur, who had played with Nina Hagen, and she was just in every band in our scene for a long time. And then she just went through this revolving door of people.
Yeah.
Until 2007, I guess. There was a set lineup for a while. And then I joined in 2008. And it was like every year we were moving somebody out, like a baseball team. Like, every year there's a different group of guys. They're still the Dodgers, but they're all different guys, right?
Right.
By 2010, we had kind of solidified with a new bass player, this guy Brandon Blackwell, who's the big guy in the video.
Okay, yeah.
And Frank Agnew was on guitar, Rick's brother.
Nice.
And now people know them from the Adolescents, the punk band, which is they're sort of like, so you just gave that look like who?
Yeah, I remember.
They're like the hometown. Yeah, they're like the hometown punk band for LA and Orange County.
Okay.
So here they're huge, like TSOL is another one. Huge here. The rest of the country, no one's ever heard of them.
Right.
But now those two guys, Rick and Frank, both played on the first Christian Death album, the super influential Only Theater of Pain. So that's kind of where the connection is. So it's like that same pool of people in 45 Grave and Christian Death, playing in all these different bands. I think Frank was in every band for a while throughout the 80s. So in that little period, we kind of had a set lineup. We did a record that has Night of the Demons on it.
Cool.
And it's called Pick Your Poison, which has some gothy stuff on it, has some sort of punky stuff on it, has a country tune on it. So it's all very, yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's a full-on country song on it.
Yeah.
Dinah Cancer wrote in 1978 or 79 as a joke, because Paul Cutler said, "You can't write a country song, can you?"
Oh, nice.
So she wrote, yeah, they just never recorded it.
Nice.
So we recorded it. So there's a couple songs on that record that are from the original lineup. They just never finished them, so there's still a link to the old band.
Yeah.
We just had a modern studio and modern equipment and better sounds and stuff. So yeah, it's all one long continuum. So I feel like I've been in that band since 1978.
Right.
But really, it's been 12 years now. So
that's
it's actually longer than the original band lasted.
Yeah, and did you guys have any plans to tour recently? I know with the COVID-19 stuff and the stay-at-home orders, that kind of put the kibosh on a lot of plans for a while.
Yeah, with us it's a little bit different. Dinah Cancer's turning 60 this year.
Oh.
All the other members we're all adults now with jobs, and nobody has any kids except for Dinah, but it's harder to tour now. Yeah. So when I first joined, we did some smaller road trips in Northern California. We played around New York for a week. But what we've settled on, which I think works better for a band like us, is we like to do 1 or 2 shows a month that are really good shows, but all over. So we've been, in the last 5 years, we've played in Santiago, Chile. We've played in Mexico City. We've played in Germany at a big festival called Wave Gothic Treffen. So it works a little better to do one weekend and play to 1,500 people instead of do 6 weeks in a van playing to 80 people at a time, which is what I did for years and years and years before. It's just, it doesn't work as well. You don't make any money anyway. Right. I mean, in the stuff you do, you do a festival, but have you done any sort of traveling with films and that?
No, not with me. Most of my stuff, is online. I used to be in a performance group, is kind of like Guar, but we weren't a band. We were a big stage fight choreographed play.
Oh, got you.
And we'd be dressed up in big latex monster outfits, hooked up with squibs and everything. We'd be rolling around, fighting, stabbing each other and stuff.
Yeah.
We'd have a band providing the live musical score, but it was just too many parts and too many pieces for us to be touring. So we would just do shows at large theaters and junkyards here in town. So that's the extent of like performance. As far as films go, no, if we got into a film festival, it's like, well, the economics just aren't there to go fly.
They're not there, right?
So
really,
here's our film. If you want us to call in and do an interview, great. Otherwise, it's like we're not going to make any money,
Right.
Why are we showing up? So yeah, that totally makes perfect sense.
So you can imagine driving around for 6 weeks,
and
doing gigs or showing your film, and coming home in debt.
Right.
Which is how it works.
Well, and it makes more sense to go out and do those big international festivals.
Right.
Because they're going to shell out more than likely a little extra money for Americans to come out there, as opposed to also any festival, maybe the festivals in the States might not be as economical either.
Right. So for us, I mean, our draw is enough that we can play the Whiskey in LA and fill the room, or bigger clubs, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But what's more fun is to play a 2,000 seater with TSOL or there's this very popular band out here called Mac Sabbath.
Oh, yep.
Right.
I know them. Yeah.
Yeah, we've played with them a couple times, so it's great. You open, you play 40 minutes. There's a full room, and you're done by 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're not in the backwoods of Georgia at 3 a.m. loading a van.
Right.
So you play to more people hear you that way.
Yeah.
Now with other bands, if you can fill a room, then it's worth touring.
Right.
If you can do it around the country. But honestly, I don't know anybody in the goth scene that can do that in America. Yeah. So with goth bands or gothic or dark wave or death rock or whatever you want to call it, it's all based on this festival seasons. You can go to 30 bands can go to one place and 5,000 people will show up.
Yeah.
But if you go there next week on your own, 22 of your friends will show up. So it's kind of how it is with everybody.
Yeah. But it's probably not just that way, just in the goth or the death rock scene. It's across the board.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
these well-known punk bands that we can list, they'll do 3 weeks in a row. They'll do 2 really good gigs, Friday night and Friday night.
Yeah.
And then they got to play Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the middle of nowhere to nobody. Yeah. So it gets really. That's why most of the guys that we all know have normal jobs during the week or do other art or whatever.
Yeah. We've got like Slim Cessna's Auto Club, which is kind of this country folk. They're like this sarcastic, spiritual band, and a lot of tongue in cheek. It's really fun. It's amazing band, amazing performances. But yeah, when they go on tour, it's just festival dates.
Right.
And then they're back home, and they have, some of them have teaching gigs, and they're back to the day job and stuff.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, if you're a touring band, for anybody to make their money back, you've got to draw 100 people that pay full price just for the bar to make your guarantee so they can pay you.
Right.
If you're doing 150 to 200 people every night, then you can tour.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of bands that are they're pulling 40 people a night in, the middle of Illinois on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Just to get gas to get to the next place. But it's not really it's fun.
Yeah.
But it's not a career, or it's not feasible.
Yeah.
You do that enough times and you just stop doing it.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to be something that's going to make ends meet necessarily.
Right. When I was in this band called The Last Dance throughout the aughts,
yeah,
we toured every year, and it was the most fun I've ever had. Touring's great,
right?
If you can get away with it. But we would come home. Well, they would come home. I was a hired gun, so I got paid. Which is the only right. That's the way to do it.
Right.
But they would come home in debt every time after 6 weeks. But it was fun. So when you're in your 20s and early 30s, you can get away with that stuff. It's harder to do when you're ancient.
as we are when we hit our 50s.
Yes. This is all lots of plastic surgery and makeup you're looking at here now.
Oh, well, I just did a 2x4 to my face.
See, horror movies, we have prosthetics and stuff.
That's right. So somebody should have told me that we could have used props. It's like, I just figured we'd do the real thing. This isn't wrestling.
Next time we'll just use puppets.
Yeah, I'll just use puppets. Yeah. Tom, you're an educator too. You're teaching drumming. Are you normally teaching to younger kids, or is it just a whole range of folks?
These days, it's mostly young kids. I'm here in Long Beach, California. Mm-hmm. And I've got little 4, 5, 6-year-olds coming in here. I've been teaching since 1989, since I got out of music school. Okay. So there was a period where I was doing 50 kids or 50 students a week. Yeah. And I remember I had a 75-year-old man would come in. Mm-hmm. I had one little boy. He took drum lessons for a couple weeks, and then he figured he just wanted to come hang out with me, but he didn't want to play. Oh. So his mom took the lessons for a couple months, and she was really good. Oh. But nice. She was like this corporate lady. Uh-huh. And she would come in and play, and she had her work clothes on, in her bag.
Yeah.
So I've had all the above. The little kids are more fun. Yeah. Teenagers are harder because they're not as accepting of things unless they're really into it. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. People in their mid-20s are harder to teach something brand new because they're too aware of what they're doing wrong and that they don't know what they're doing. And little kids just do whatever. They don't have, they're just having fun hitting things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's been all age ranges. I've had a bunch of autistic students.
Wow. Okay.
At one point I had 7 special needs students.
No kidding.
Yeah. One Down syndrome boy.
Okay.
Who had a great time. Yeah. He could barely play. We would play for maybe 5 or 10 minutes of a half-hour lesson. The rest of the time, we were just literally throwing drumsticks at each other, tossing them back and forth to each other. He used to love that. He would take a nap, Yeah. He was about 6. Actually, I take that back. He was older.
Okay.
He was about 12, but he looked like a 6-year-old. He was really small.
Okay.
And he was nonverbal. So he just kind of grunted and pointed, but we had a great time.
Yeah.
I've had some of these autistic kids could play. They could play songs.
Nice.
So yeah, it was really fun. It was fun for them, I think. Hopefully it was helpful,
Yeah. Well, I'd imagine that they probably need some kind of outlet or stimulus, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And those kids tend to focus on one thing. Right. So you can teach them one little beat. And then they could do that for the next 3 hours and not because they super, super focus. Yeah. I had other kids who couldn't play at all. Okay. But that wasn't the point of them being there. Yeah. Right. It was just fun for them. It was a way to get out of the house and get them into some sort of activity that didn't involve school or their normal handler yelling at them all the time.
Yeah. At the very least, they were being introduced to music, whether it was in their comfort zone or not.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think, and especially with the young kids, you don't know what's going to hit or miss, but that's that age too. Right. The brains are developing, everything's developing, and it's just like, get them going early. they're going to pick on up on something and hopefully run with it.
What I learned with all the students really was you had to find out what they were able to do naturally. Because some of these kids could play things that I was like, where did you learn that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But whatever, like the mechanics of their leg was such that they could play the bass drum parts that most of the students had no aptitude for at all.
Yeah.
Some kids, little kids, knew when to play a drum fill in a song.
Oh.
Like, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
Just naturally. So you had to figure out what those things were.
Yeah.
And then work with that rather than trying to force him into learning any pattern.
Yeah.
Or any kind of coordination thing. Because it's hard when you're that little, especially.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. You could see how their brains kind of worked, or how some people had fingers they could use to manipulate the stick.
Oh.
Other guys are like
very rigid.
yeah. Or they hold it like a hammer and hit with their whole shoulder.
Ooh, man.
I have this one little boy. He's I guess he's 6.5 now.
Yeah.
He can just come and he's totally relaxed. And I'm like, where'd you get that from? He's like, I don't know. He's able to do it.
Nice.
Which makes me think that's probably true for other things.
Yeah.
Also.
True.
Painting or sports or horror movies or whatever they're into.
Yeah.
Right?
You think he would be able to just go off and pick up the next thing.
Right.
Yeah. Do you ever take kids and like sit somebody else down that's having problems and like kind of showcase like, hey, this is what Billy can do.
Yeah.
And, like, what do you, and see what their response is and see if they engage.
Yeah, you can't really see it in here, but there's 2 drum sets in this room. There's one way over here. So when the next kid comes in, if a student's doing particularly well, I'll have the next kid come in.
Okay.
Because for one, it gives the player way more confidence to do his thing in front of another kid his age.
Oh, smart, yeah.
If you have to do it in front of their mom, they get embarrassed.
I can understand.
Right?
Yeah.
If you have some stranger who's their age, they're like, hey, I'm the star here, kind of vibe. Right. And I'll send the kids videos of other kids their age, because there's a million of them on YouTube. Yeah. Look at this little guy. He could do it. You're older than he is. What's wrong with you? I mean, no.
No.
None of
that. Come in and what was that? What was that movie with J.K. Simmons where he was the music?
Oh yeah.
And it was just like very militant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't do that.
Right. There were a lot of discussions with people about that I went to music school with, or people that had been in that kind of, about how realistic that was or not.
Yeah.
And that was more like what you would find at boot camp in the Marines.
Right.
And music school, you paid them to be there, so they don't care if you learn this stuff or not. It's kind of like college. It's up to you to learn it. They're going to give it to you, but they're not going to injure you for not learning your lesson that week.
Yeah.
They might shame you a little bit, but it wasn't like that.
Sure. Well, hopefully by college you can start taking that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But what since you're at your drums, what kind of what's like the first thing you would normally work with a first-time student on? Like, is there a piece or?
Yes. What I always do with new kids, this is any age, is I want them to be able to play a song or along with a song.
Okay.
In the first week or 2.
Wow.
So, and this goes for everybody. The first lesson is, this is a drumstick. This is a snare drum, right? Yeah. You draw a little picture of it and that. But the first lesson is always what we call a money beat. Do you know what that is? You ever heard that term?
No.
A money beat is what they play at the beginning of Billie Jean by Michael Jackson.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And the term comes from, if you can play this great, you can make money. Right? If you can get people to dance to this, right, you can get paid. Right? That's it.
Yeah.
So that's the first lesson, is really just to motions. So if you're a right-handed person, it would be right foot, right hand together, like that.
Mm-hmm.
We call that boom.
Oh, okay.
Because to a little kid, it sounds like boom.
Yeah.
That's motion 1. Motion 2 is called tap. It's just both hands together.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
On the snare drum and on this cymbal over here, the hi-hat cymbal. So it's motion 1, boom. Motion 2, tap. So if you say boom, tap, that's the pattern.
Nice.
And most, I would say, students over 5 can learn this in under 30 minutes.
Okay.
Now, if they remember it or not, it's another thing.
Right.
But just by teaching them that, you get an idea if they have any physical ability at all.
Yeah.
I've had kids come in, they're totally discombobulated, but it's just 2 things. It's pretty cool because you can turn on any rock song and that fits. Doesn't matter what the song is.
True.
Generally. 95% of rock songs are this with more notes shoved on top of it. So you just ask them, who do you like? What's the song you like? And these days it's going to be something from a video game or, right? I play a lot of these kid songs where they're teaching you about science or the planets or.
That's great.
Right. I have this one boy named Will, and he's obsessed with all that stuff.
Oh.
He can tell you every country on the map and every state in each country. Like, and he's 8, right? He's because he's a kid. He gets focused on this stuff.
Yeah.
So we have all these songs where they're telling you about the counties in Upper New York or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Or Peru. All the, and he knows them all. But there's these goofy little like country songs. So we play along to that, and that's what he's into. That's
wonderful.
It's funny.
If anybody can have an anchor, to that, and just start with that basis of towards creativity. I mean, that's absolutely wonderful.
Right. It's funny because 10, 15 years ago, when Guitar Hero came out, all the kids were coming and they're like, I want to play Black Sabbath. I'm like, what? I want to play this Iron Maiden song. I'm like, right on, finally, right?
Yeah, any way they can learn that stuff.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
I'm all for that.
Right. Because I was teaching a lot of Blink-182 about 2004 or whenever that was.
That's awesome. We were talking about like our friend Nick Mason too. Mutual drummer. In between the both of you, you're in like 20, 30 bands.
Something like that.
Yeah, at any given time. You mentioned was it Last Dance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they still around? You're still working with them?
It's not really a functioning band anymore.
Okay.
That one, they started in 1991.
Yeah.
And from probably 96 to 2006, they toured a lot. Yeah. They used to tour basically America and Europe once a year.
Wow.
And do lots and lots of festivals. So that's kind of who I was talking about. They were doing, 5,000 people at a festival in Germany. And then 2 nights later in Italy, they were playing to 6 people and the other bands, right? That's the tour. And trying to get paid and all that stuff you read about.
Right.
So what happened with that band is people grow up and people move. So eventually the singer moved to Charlottesville, Virginia.
Oh, okay.
The bass player moved to Tucson, Arizona. And the guitar player, who was kind of the leader, Rick Joyce, moved to England. He got married to a British girl and moved off to England.
Cool.
So we actually did an album in 2015 where we were just trading tracks over the internet and Rick mixed it in England and it worked fine.
Yeah.
Because you can do that now. You couldn't do that 20 years ago. Right?
Well, and even like right now, going back to, COVID and everything, that's more of a necessity.
Right.
If you want to with collaborators.
Right. So that kind of led me to the thing we're doing now, which is trading tracks. People from all over the place are working on the same project because you can now.
Yeah.
Yeah, with The Last Dance, we did a small tour of England in 2015. We did a festival, and we did about a week of gigs around the country, which were all really good, actually, because they have some draw there. But yeah, we did a record without ever being in the same room, which is crazy.
That's pretty wild, huh? Yeah, and then, you know, with Feast, I mean, you've as we were, you know, mentioning before, you've been, you know, working. You've had that music since the '90s. Obviously, it never went away.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that always stayed with you, I suppose.
The idea was always there.
Yeah.
But the thing with being a drummer is you can't really record in your house unless you have a studio built.
Sure.
So you have to go to a real studio, and it costs money to do all this stuff.
Okay.
It takes time.
Yeah.
You know, if you have your singer who lives in Oklahoma, you can't get him to California to sing on your track.
Yeah.
All this stuff, right?
Especially right now.
Right. So what happened with that was in early 2019, you know, every year you're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to work out more, and I'm going to finish that painting project or finish that movie in your case or whatever it is.
New Year's resolutions.
Right. And then you go 3 months and you're like, all right, scratch that.
At least you stuck with it for 3 months. It's usually by January 15th, fuck this.
Right. So one of the things in 2019 was, okay, I'm going to get at least these drum tracks recorded and have the original singer sing on them.
Yeah.
So I think in summertime, I went and recorded the drums, and I worked on them. Some they changed a little bit, but basically the same patterns and the same motifs.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm thinking it's going to be the melodies and singing from 1995.
Right.
I had a cassette tape of that one show, so that's what I was playing to in my head.
Yeah.
I use an engineer named Dave Klein in LA. He was the drummer in Agent Orange for the past 10 years.
Okay.
And he's one of these guys. He does have a studio at his house.
Nice.
And he's a really great engineer. So I've been doing lots of recording with him over the last few years for other people.
Oh, cool.
So I went and recorded 2 things with him. And the idea was I was going to get together with Terry and bring her to the studio. Well, that was kind of on the plate for early 2000.
Yeah.
But then the world closed in February or March.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go to a studio. Couldn't get the tracks to other people or what have you. So what ended up happening was I just started writing people that I knew who had the ability to record at home and sending them the tracks.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was sending the same tracks to multiple people to see who would jump on it, who was interested, and who would actually do it. Because as you said, you start doing things and they either don't happen or they lose interest or whatever.
Right.
So I knew this singer named Heather Macias, who I had been in a band with in 1991 and 92, which was my first like real goth band. They were like a Dead Can Dance kind of style band. It was great, actually. But of course, it went for 6 months, and then we all hated each other, so we all broke up or whatever. Right?
Water under the bridge.
Yeah, right. And I hadn't talked to her in probably, I haven't seen her actually since 1992.
Oh, wow.
And we talked a little bit online a few years ago. Turns out she was my neighbor for a couple of years, but I didn't know it.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
in Long Beach here. But a few years ago, she got married and moved off to Oklahoma, outside of Tulsa.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, I'm going to send you this thing. See if you can sing over it. And she says, well, you know, my husband plays guitar. I was like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, he can listen to it or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? I had no idea this dude was a total like stud.
Right.
And he's just some you know, how people are. He's just some guy who works and has kids, but he plays guitar next to dabble with recording.
Yeah.
So like 2 weeks later, I get these tracks back for them, and it's insane. It's like 20 tracks of guitar and synth and bass and I think 6 tracks of vocals, maybe. It's all this stuff. It was really good. I had no idea this guy was like a writer. And that's this song that's in the video, Malek. I can't say the whole name. But
for everybody that's watching on the event page, I've got the link up to the feast video for Tom's music too. So make sure you watch that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. But that's what I thought too. And I got it back. I was like, holy hell, what is this stuff? Because it's a complete song with all these other parts. I was just thinking singing over my drums would be fine, right? Like the feast, like the Creatures project.
Right.
But it's turned into more than that, because now it's actually marketable music, I think.
Yeah.
They got that done in like 3 weeks.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So really, you just sent it off, and they just kind of took it and ran with it. It sounds like.
Right.
Without a whole lot of conversation.
No, my only instructions to anybody was, here's the track, do whatever you want with it. You can cut it up, you can edit it. You don't have to play to the drums as they are. You can just take one piece if you want and make an industrial rock track out of it. You can play it backwards. I don't care. I just want to see what would happen.
Yeah.
So like that particular drum track, 3 people have it to play with.
Yeah.
Theirs is the only one that's been finished and sent back, but there's potential that you'll hear multiple versions of that same thing as time goes on.
Okay.
One of them I sent to this guy named Andrew Benjamin, who's he's in Georgia now. He used to run this crazy band called Hell Blinky, and he's like a Tom Waits kind of musical mad scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah. This dude used to play the drums, play guitar, and sing at the same time.
Yeah, nice.
And all of his records are they're just crazy, like folk, country, blues, punk. So he's got the track. And same thing, I told him, I don't know what he's going to do, but I know it's going to be weird. So right on, right?
Nice.
So he's been messing with it. There's another couple in Seattle who come from the steampunk scene. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
A little bit.
Yeah, that's these kids. They're kind of like ex-goths who dress in brown, and they look like they're a pirate, like a Zeppelin pilot or whatever.
Yeah, we've got a steampunk convention out here in Denver.
Right. So they were in this band called Abney Park, which is the biggest steampunk band in the country, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah, they're another couple, Paul and Mel Maiden.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got another track, which is from that same session, the same drum session, that their song is almost finished. And what's interesting about them is, like Heather, she's this crazy opera-trained singer with like this, I don't know, 4.5 octave range.
Oh.
Also very sickly. So she can't tour, do gigs. Mm-hmm. But if you catch her on a good day, she can sing and record. And as most people are, she's like, it's horrible. You won't like it. It's insane how good this girl is, right? All of her tracks are in tune. You can mix and match them. They're all perfectly in tune. And she's really, really, really good.
Nice.
So that's the second Feast track that will be coming out probably in September, I'm guessing. I know I'm mixing it at the end of this month.
Nice.
And there's some other players on that one. So between these 2 girls, I have these 2 insane singers that write.
Yeah.
And don't sing in blues verse, or they only sing in English.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
So it gives it that sort of mysterious quality because there's no words, really.
Yeah.
Mel just kind of sings like she's a horn. Like, not scat singing, but it's kind of that quality. It's just notes singing melodies. Where Heather's singing in Hebrew.
Okay.
So she's got lyrics,
Yeah.
but nobody knows what they are except for her.
Unless you know Hebrew.
Right. So it's pretty cool because it takes you out of listening to the words, so you get stuck listening to the drums and the melody and the groove and all of that stuff. I may actually have them both on one track eventually. That's
cool.
An idea that popped up a couple weeks ago.
This seems like a delightful, collaboration. Has any of these artists like sent you just, hey, I've got this track, let's just kind of keep the same formula going. It's like do with it what thou will. And
right. Do what thou will should be the whole of the law. Right. Yeah. But what I've kind of been thinking about of late is originally I was like, I'm just going to do different things, send them to different people, all be under one name, like Pigface. Yeah. But I'm sensing that I'm going to have to make sure I don't get too into one thing. Okay. If everyone's like, oh, we really like this First Feast song, well, I can keep doing songs in that same vibe. Or I can do an industrial rock track next. Right. You want to make it eclectic. Yes. That way I can mix in more people. Yeah. And these are all styles I like to play. So like I have an idea for like a really loud, nasty, industrial kind of sounding track with lots of screaming and lots of noise and lots of like Moog and lots of theremins, stuff like that. Love totally different. Yeah. But you recorded anything for that? Any of your drums for that? Not for that one. That's still in the hopper. Okay. One of the things I did is about 10 years ago, I went to my friend's home studio and recorded drums for a day. Yeah. And some of it was for a project that never happened. Some of it was just, he's like, play this. Yeah. I might use it. So I had one of those tracks that I sent to Heather and Mario. And again, within 2 weeks, they sent me back a song. I'm like, this is going too quick for me, kids. But it's really, really mellow and really dreamy. Okay. And again, she's singing in some distant language from a far off land. It's really, really mellow. But on that one, I'm going to have her sing against a male voice. Okay. Who's this guy in LA named Chris Strombopoulos. Yeah. And he's like this power rock singer. Okay. So when I first heard that track that they sent me, I'm like, this is for him. Yeah. I didn't know Heather was going to sing on it. And then she sends back this like really rad vocal track. And the way I thought of it was like, we're all sort of visual. Yeah. I thought her voice is like the wind blowing through the hills, right? Okay. And Chris is going to be like lightning, thunder. Right. So that'll be the third track that will come out probably around the end of the year. I'm trying to do it every 2 or 3 months. It sounds like you just got all these amazing textures. Do you find you prefer? Obviously, you really like doing the drums, but do you get the same amount of pleasure just arranging everything? Yeah. I'm not a songwriter. Right. Like I'm not proficient enough at guitar or piano to like record myself. Yeah. I can write bass lines and I can write drums. I've given classes on how to write drum parts. Okay. I did a drum sort of a festival in upstate New York, and that was the class I taught, is what to play against a song so you sound good, right? Yeah. That's part of the educator thing. Yeah. But what I'm better at is taking your idea and then mangling it and editing it and chopping it up and all that. You're not going to get the original chorus from me. Yeah. But I can take your chorus and twist it 80 different ways because I'm educated in that. Yeah. If that makes sense, right? Most definitely. Well, that's my strength. It kind of sounds like if you were to go visually, found object art, where you just take some ready-mades that are already pre-assembled, and then just like mangle it until you make something that is intriguing to you, and and then just see how the rest of the world responds. So
That's pretty fascinating. Or even like an exquisite corpse, you know?
Right. I mean, there are a few band leaders that are drummers, but it's the same thing. They need these other people to write the music for them.
Right.
One of my biggest influences is Bill Bruford, who was in Yes and King Crimson, and in the 70s he had his own band where he wrote the music, but he needed a piano player to write it for him.
Yeah.
Based on his drumming.
Okay.
So it was like, I have this pattern, here's the rhythm, and then here's a basic idea, like I want a melody going up and then for 4 bars and then going down. I mean, something really basic like that. Yeah. And then he'd have a piano player actually write it for him. Oh, okay. So he was like using a melodic instrument player as a conduit for his own ideas. But it was all based on the drumming he wanted to showcase. Jojo Mayer's another guy in the drumming community who.
Oh shoot! Tom just froze on us for a second. Hopefully he doesn't go away. Hang tight with us, everybody. Tom will be right back, we hope. What an unfortunate frame to be stuck with. But I've been caught in much more compromising poses. So Tom, if you're still there, hang in. If you need to close out, you can always chime back in. Nope. Just a second. Let me message Tom. So just let him know to chime back in. Messaging him on Facebook, the universal platform for great communication. And so hang tight, everybody that's watching out there. So we'll see if he is able to chime back in. So give it a minute. Hope everybody's Sunday is going pretty swimmingly. Looks like the forecast outside is we've got a little bit of overcast. So maybe we'll get some rain. I'm hoping, because it has been really hot. Zoom will time out for after an hour. Oh, geez. So he timed back out. So hang tight. When it comes to Tom's work, go to the Facebook event page at facebook.com, Daniel R. Crosier, which chances are you're watching it here anyway. In the event page. Okay, it looks like we're about to do a part 2. So hang tight. I'm gonna go ahead and close this one out, and we'll see you for part 2, which will get going here shortly.